We are beyond the future. We are beyond the norm. We are beyond the eye.
You might need a telescope. Doesn't matter whether your talents are from far or close by. We are beyond the eyes.
Welcome to another episode of Long On Story. Today I'm really excited to talk a little bit about the movie that's been on everybody's lips, The Odyssey. I had a chance to go watch it this weekend. Fortunately, my daughter was away and she was away with her cousin. It was her cousin's birthday. They got to celebrate, had a lot of fun, but it meant my wife and I got 3 hours of a gap to go watch The Odyssey. It's a big gap, but it was a great movie. Normally my wife sleeps through such long movies, but she didn't this time, which tells me something about the story, The Odyssey, or at least Christopher Nolan's take on it. Sing of the Man, the muse, the man of twists and turns. The story is about Odysseus, and it's from Homer's poem, and it's really Christopher Nolan's interpretation of this poem that has been there even before Christ. It's a story of a journey of a man going back home after the Trojan War, where he tricked the Trojans with a horse as a gift. And it's such an interesting take, not just because Christopher Nolan interpreted something about a cunning man and put Matt Damon as that main man. I thought it wasn't going to work. It really worked really, really well. But it's really the other plays he does that support the story. And really, actually at the heart of the story, something that stuck out for me was the greatest threat or the greatest enemy of Odysseus making it home ends up being Calypso. Now, this is one of those, if you haven't watched the movie, go watch it. But Calypso is well known, and just it highlights the reality that comfort can be our greatest danger to making it to our dreams. And so the question then obviously is reflected back to us. I'm seeing the spectacle in front of me, this great story, and I'm wondering what's it going to take for us to tell our stories well on this continent. And that's the journey. I'm long on story. I'm long on African stories specifically. And what's it going to take, and what comforts have we gotten used to that have allowed us not to get to the dream space? That's a question we have to ask. Now, we've said already, I've declared that our theory of change is we believe strongly that we have to dovetail intellectual property with real estate property. We have to figure out how to dovetail that to the benefit of those in front of the camera and behind. How do we begin to bring real estate property into play? But intellectual property also, we need to keep score of the line items of intellectual property, specifically image rights of actors. So last time we chatted a little bit about actors and how actors make their money. Currently, on the African continent, actors get paid a salary just like everyone else on a set to perform, and they get paid, and that's that, because most independent productions don't return back the money that they put in, sadly. And the reason for that we've looked at is because from an exhibition point of view, there are not enough cinemas to exhibit to ensure the upside of movies on the continent. And so if your movie does not go global and access the global exhibition points, you're losing. So from an intellectual property perspective, what do we need to do to get our actors to be drivers of the intellectual property on the continent and beyond? So we have to also, from a real estate property perspective, grow the number of exhibition points on the continent. But we also need our actors to grow in their star power. We need them to grow in their star power. What do we need to do to support them in growth in their star power? And as they grow in their star power, how do we ensure that they're financially sustainable? So, and how do they use their star power not just to push the movies, but to drive other business off screen? That's a question we have to ask, and not just as the modern day term is called influencers, but really as key stakeholders, whether from a real estate perspective in pushing real estate, or in pushing brands or brand integration, which is the most famous ways that film stars have always pushed their brand off screen. And how do we begin to get those partnerships from a small business perspective all the way to big business? So how do we partner and scale up actors and partner them with small businesses, medium-sized businesses, or startup businesses that can scale. And as those startup businesses scale, they scale with our actors from the continent. I think that's a study that we have to look at and see if we can drive that brand integration deep inside our movies. How do we tell stories that include the brands that are on the up and up, the actors that are on the up and up? And lastly, how do we take a trick out of Christopher Nolan's book? He starts the Odyssey in a very interesting way. He includes a musician right at the beginning, someone who we would not have thought would be in a movie the size of Christopher Nolan's, Trevor Scott. Trevor Scott plays the bard, the poet, so as to say. And he is pointing us to the man, the face, as a bard. And he's reminding us of the story of Odysseus' victory in Troy. And they are borrowing Trevor Scott's image rights as a musician to leverage for the movie and reach an audience who would much rather not probably watch Odyssey. It's a great play. How do we do that? Not just from an actor's perspective, but from a musical perspective. One of the biggest line items that you pay for in an independent production in South Africa, we've made 2 of those, is actually music. Sadly, in South Africa, you pay for these music rights, which is a fair thing to do. But those musicians who made that music probably don't even know that their music is in your movie. They probably get a check somewhere and they're more than happy for that check. But sadly, for your intellectual property, that leverage hasn't borne the results that you're hoping for. You don't have the return on investment that you're hoping to have gotten. And so that collaboration has to be closer as we stack up that intellectual property. That musicians are just as much a part of our movies as actors are. So how do we take care of the actors? How do we better collaborate with the musicians and in that way begin to also take care of the musicians? And how do we take care of the crew and cast all together, ensuring that we get a return on investment, not just for the investors, but for everybody who puts their blood, sweat, and tears in African IP. That's why I'm long on story.